Well, first of all, I'm honored to join you today. It's obviously a very different conversation that we might have today than we would have had 6 or 8 months ago. Right?
Mhm.
2020 has been an unprecedented year. A lot of things have happened, and a lot of things have changed. So, what I would like to do today, one, because I'm in Indiana in the United States, and I know that many of us are spread around, have different experiences, even if we're in the same countries. We'll have different experiences with different firms and maybe as students or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to present a lot of ideas today, and I'll start with a few questions. But if you have any thoughts on those questions, I'll go through the questions and you can answer them in the chat. You can just say yes or no. But I really want this. I want you to feel like this is a conversation, like it's a discussion, because that's what it's really meant to be. One of the great things is, I think one of the best developments over the last 6 months is the the I'll call it the rapid adaptation of technology. And I believe that actually in this time, that although in many cases we've been forced to stay apart, I believe that the rapid adaptation of technology has really given us more opportunity and more acceptance in connecting. So I think that's sort of the irony of what we've been going through over the last several months. But with that being said, I do want to make sure that you feel like this is a forum where we can have a conversation. So with that, what I'd like to do again, this conversation today is based on some study that I've been doing over the past several years, obviously going back before COVID-19, before this global pandemic, before the global economy started to crash. And it's this idea that I've been studying that's really based not only on the profession of architecture, but across all types of professional services. So whether you're an architect or you have friends, colleagues that are attorneys or accountants or engineers or something like that, everything that I'm going to talk about today applies to them as well. And the study of that I've been working on, like I said, ego versus empathy, really comes directly out of the professional services world. But what I'd like to start out with is just a simple question. Are you feeling uncertain? And you can go ahead and put that into the chat box. Your answer is a yes or no question, really. Are you feeling uncertain? Like I said, a lot has happened, right? Right? A lot has changed. There's a lot going on in the world, no matter where you are in the world. Again, whether it's health related or economic related, or in some areas we have political and social unrest. So, with all of those things going on, the question right now is: are you feeling uncertain? And it looks like a lot of people are, and that's exactly what I expected. Right? That's the answer that I expected. And unfortunately, when we feel that uncertainty, um, we might feel reluctant to act. We might feel like there's nothing that we can do, or we're just along for the ride, as a saying that you hear sometimes in the United States. But um, even though there is uncertainty widespread across the world, even though we don't know what will happen tomorrow or next week, we don't know how and when the economy will come back, all of those things, at the same time, there are great opportunities in front of us. When we look at the Great Recession back 2008, 2009, when we look at time periods where there has been uncertainty, where there have been great challenges, what always comes out of those times of great challenge are great opportunities. And we look at some of the strongest, some of the best companies, some of the new technologies that change the way we live, the way we work. Almost all of those actually come out of times of uncertainty. They come out of times of great challenge. And so that's the upside of this. that even though that many of us, maybe all of us, are feeling uncertain, there are great opportunities if we identify and act on those opportunities. Now, my next question is, have you seen a change in your client's economy, right? Whoever your clients are, whatever type of work that you do, have you seen a change, whether it's just a change in their attitude or it's an actual change in um, in the amount of funding that they have? You know, in the United States, we would look at it and say, well, there are a lot of municipal projects, state and government projects that are going to have reduced budgets because we're not collecting as much tax money right now. People aren't spending as much money. There are people that, again, going back to the uncertainty, that may be reducing their budget because of that uncertainty. So the question is, have you seen a change? And it looks like a lot of yeses to this as well. There has been a change to many people. And what I'm finding in conversations with firms across the world is there can be a very different answer depending on the type of work that you do. For instance, in the United States, if you do a lot of residential work seems to be taking off. If you do custom homes, something like that. But if you do hotels or restaurants, those types of industries have been collapsing. So there can certainly be differences in perspective based on the type of work that you do, I think, especially, or also the region where you practice. And those are some of the things that I've seen. And we understand all of these things, right? As the economy is crashing down, of course, it's going to team up with that uncertainty. Of course, the reality is going to hit that when things are slowing down, it's harder to spend money on the things that we want to spend money on. But again, the upside to this is that when we have health concerns across the globe, when we're concerned about how do we go back to work, how do our children go back to school, how do we go to restaurants, how do we travel, whatever context you want to look at, with all of the change, even though the economies mainly have slowed down, there are new needs out there. And so those are the things, going back again to the new opportunities. With all of these changes, with all of these struggles, come new needs that need to be solved. And that's where you come in. As an architect, your job, of course, is to solve problems for your clients. Your job is to identify the needs that your clients have and help them solve those needs. And so anytime there's change, even when it can be in a very negative connotation, like right now, anytime there's change like that, new needs arise. And so that's the good thing. And then the next question is, were things going really well for you about 6 months? Now, I know the timeline of the global pandemic differs a little bit depending on where in the world you are. But if we go back 6 months, if we go back to February or January or December of last year, were things going really well for you just 6 months ago? That's the next question. It looks like we see some yeses to that. Someone says I'd say it's been unstable. Yes and no, and certainly, definitely in the last 6 months, unstable. And again, you know, results will vary. Perspectives will vary depending on the type of project, depending on the region that you're in. But for the most part, across the world, even just 6 months ago, or maybe going back 8, 9, 10, maybe a year ago, we had a very strong economy worldwide. There were a lot of architects that were seeing unprecedented growth in their work and in their firms. And now, not so much. Now we see things slowing down for many, and we see that there are many firm owners, firm leaders across the world that are very concerned with where things are right now. But the good thing is that there's a way for us to figure out how to get through this. There's a way for us to bring stability back to to what we do and where we are. There's a way that we can solve some of this uncertainty. It's not to say that there's a magic bullet that's going to make all of these things go away, but there is a way for us to do better and to be stronger in the way that we practice. The next question is, are you worried that you'll struggle to find new work? And I realize that some of you may be practicing architects. Some of you may be students. Some of you may be recently graduated. Maybe a couple of months ago you graduated from school. So if you'd like to look at this in terms of, from the point of view of a student, you can do that as well. Yeah, I'm worried that I'm going to struggle to find a job or keep a job if firms start to draw down, if firms start to lay off, or here, one of the favorite terms apparently in the United States is furlough, which basically means we're not really going to make a decision, but we don't have enough work for you. So the question is, no matter what your perspective is, no matter what your context is, are you worried that you'll struggle to find new work? And it looks like some of you are. And I love this comment from. I'm going to say Razan. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize. I don't mean to do that. But I think Razan says, with the power of the internet, I guess chances might not be that bad. And I love that positive attitude. And I'm going to get to attitudes like that and different attitudes that we can have here in just a couple of minutes. But I love that positive outlook there. Because, again, if you're a student and you're looking for a job, or maybe you've been laid off, you've been let go by a firm that you've worked for, or maybe you lead a firm, or you're in business development for a firm, the fact of the matter is, when the economy draws down, right, when there's less work out there, and the same number of competitors out there, there's more competition, right? There's going to be more struggle. And just, I think it's about 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be going to work with a firm here in the United States that, when they reached out to me, when we talked on the phone, they said, you know what, we're competing now more than we ever have. In fact, we're competing on projects right now that we would not have had to compete for just 6 months ago or last year. We're starting to compete more for projects that we never had to compete for before. And so that's going to be the reality when there's less and less work out there. But again, with challenges come new needs. With challenges come great opportunities and new opportunities. So if we're in tune, if we have our eyes wide open, if we're in tune with what's happening and aware of what's going on, we may be able to identify opportunities that didn't even exist 6 months ago. And what I want to make sure that we all understand is that all of your clients, assuming that they were around 6 months ago or a year ago, everything has changed for your clients. Sometimes those changes are in very large ways. Sometimes they've changed in big ways, but sometimes the changes have been very small. They've been very subtle. But everything has changed. And so if we understand that, and if we align with that, we can start to see that with that change comes new opportunities. And I want to talk about that today because I want to make sure that we understand that there is a positive note to almost all of these negative things that we can identify and that we can focus on. And so my final question is, are you worried about increased competition? I said it just a minute ago. That firm that I'm going to be visiting here in a couple of weeks is worried about competition because all of a sudden they're competing for projects that they never had to compete with before, even with some of their best clients. Some of those best clients are starting to look around and say, you know what, we have a lot of choices now. And so that firm is so worried about this increased competition that they're having me come spend a couple of days with them to try to figure some things out and how they can compete better. So the question is, The question is, are you worried about increased competition? And Atef or Atef, again, I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but Atef says, I'm worried, but it's more fun. And that's also a great attitude. I like that. I'm with you. I like the competition. I like the competitive nature. And what I'm going to give you today are some pretty simple, when we might, even though we might be worried about competition, where we might be competing more today, if we view it as being fun, that's fine. If we view it as no, that's not fun, that's nerve-wracking, that's fine too. We're going to talk about that. But what I'm going to give you today is a simple way. It's not necessarily an easy way. It's going to take some work on your part. It's going to take some change in mindsets, but I'm going to give you a simple way to compete differently, a simple way to look at how you differentiate yourself. And one of the things that I'll say probably more than once is that if you've ever looked at your firm and said, what makes us different is this. If you've ever focused on differentiation, there are a lot of people that do what I do that talk about the importance of differentiation. But what I'm going to talk about is the importance of relevance. I'm going to talk about the fact that differentiation is one thing, but relevance is everything. And I want you to understand that relevance is in the eye of the beholder. Relevance is determined by your client. It's not determined by you. And that can be a real mindset shift for a lot of people in professional services. Again, everything that I'm going to talk about today is not just about architects. You could apply these same lessons to an attorney or an accountant, someone like that. So when we talk about relevance, it's important for us to understand that our clients are the ones that determine whether or not we're relevant. And there will be some of you that say, you know what, I don't get it, or I don't believe it, or I'm not going to do what he's saying. And that's fine. You can make that decision. I don't mind that at all. But there are some of you that will say that, and there are some of you that will get this wrong. The things that I talk about, again, they're simple. It doesn't mean they're easy, and some of you will get it wrong. And that will lead me to the three things that, even though, everything that I'm going to talk about, everything is simple, I'm just going to talk about three main ideas, three big ideas. And I know that some people will reject this, some will get it wrong, but I want you to understand that what I'm talking about here will give you a leg up on your competition. It will help you to be a stronger competitor. And I believe, and I guess it stands to reason since I'm the guy on the screen talking about this, I believe that if you don't get these right, if you get these wrong, that it's going to put you at a serious disadvantage against your competition. And so I hope you'll embrace these things that I have to talk about. Again, it may take some mindset shifts. It may take you to think in different ways. But I think that if you embrace this, I think if you do these simple things, that it can really set you apart from your competitors. So at this point, I want to open it up just real quickly. If you have any thoughts or questions based on those questions that I just asked, those ideas that I just presented, do you have any questions at this point? Is there anything that that you think I'm off base on? Because again, there's a cultural difference, right? I'm in the United States. Many of you I know are in the Middle East. Even from firm to firm type, firm size, things can be different. So if there's anything that, we can open it up here for just a minute. If there's anything that you have a question about or you think that needs to be addressed, is there anything that I didn't touch on so far that you think needs to be touched on? I don't see a lot of questions here. I see that I'm sorry, and again, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. It says that I'm sorry, but I think I missed the point. The point that I'm getting at so far is that a lot of things are changing, right? A lot of things have changed over the last 6 months. If we look at the world that we're in, if we look globally, and then try to bring that down to the practice of architecture, no matter where we are, a lot of things have changed. And because the economy has retracted, because of this, the global health concerns that we're in, a lot of things are changing for your clients. And so what I want to talk about today is the way that you can remain relevant to your clients, the way that you can compete better, and the way that you can be a better architect based on these three main ideas that I'm going to present here in just a second. And Atef's question is, are you talking about individual or corporate practice? And this can apply to either one. What I'm going to talk about is going to apply to either one. And maybe I'll just go ahead and jump right into these ideas right now. What I want everybody to understand is the first main idea that I want you to understand is that there's a land grab coming. Now, what do I mean by that? What's a land grab? Well, if we think about history, and this has happened in small ways, it's happened in large ways, but anytime there's a major change, if we look at the history of the United States, when colonization began in the United States, there's a lot of land in the United States, and people went out and they started to claim land. Was it theirs? No, it wasn't theirs. Was it right for them to claim it? In some cases, no, it wasn't. In some cases, I don't know. But the fact of the matter was that people went out and they claimed land, and that happened all over the world throughout history, right? There's always been a land grab. And anytime when there's a major change, there's a possibility of a land grab. Well, what does that mean in terms of architecture? Well, one thing that happens sometimes is that architects say, well, you know what? There are professions, there are people that have started to do things that architects traditionally did. Maybe it's real estate developers. Maybe real estate developers have started to control some of the conversations that architects used to control. Maybe real estate developers or contractors or developers of some sort have over the years started to determine how offices were designed, how the workplace was designed, or how hotels or something like that were designed. Many times architects can look out and say, you know what, we've lost control of some of these things that we traditionally were in charge of. And what I want you to understand is that as things change, and things are evolving very rapidly now throughout the world in the way decisions are made. Again, if we look strictly at world health, things are evolving very quickly. What does it mean? Right? Do we need to be quarantined? Do we need to stay in our homes? Do we need to wear masks? Can we go out and go to restaurants? Can we travel? Things like that. When things are evolving as quickly as they are, I mentioned it before, there are new opportunities, there are new needs, there are new ways that your clients are going to find to operate. And the question is, are you going to be on the front lines to help them figure those things out? Are you going to go out and talk to your clients and figure out what their new needs are and say, you know what? 6 months ago, I may not have done this. As an architect, I may not have had this service. I may not have provided this service. I may not have even thought about this service. This service may not have even been necessary 6 months ago, but it is now. Right? Here's where we are today. So when I talk about this land grab, I'm talking about the new opportunities that are out there in front of you and being open to those opportunities and being flexible, being aware. Not only being open, but looking for those opportunities, because if you don't take those opportunities, someone else will. The next thing that I want to talk about, the next big idea that I want to talk about is that, just like was mentioned here a few minutes ago, was that there's a lot of positivity. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to the competition. I think there's opportunity out there based on the fact that the internet has made us more connected. There are basically three mindsets that all of us have when we go through times of crisis. And these mindsets are going to fluctuate, and where you are in these three mindsets may change, but the mindset that you adapt will greatly influence your ability to survive and thrive and even succeed and grow through times of crisis and through this, this time of global crisis as things change. The first mindset is the one that I call sort of that hunker down mindset. It's that mindset that says, you know what, things are changing very rapidly. Things are crashing down around us. I'm just going to hunker down. I'm going to wait for this to pass, and then I'll figure it out after it's all passed. I'm going to figure out what my practice looks like. I'm going to figure out how to help my clients once everything is settled. Once all the health, maybe once there's a vaccine, I'm going to help my clients after that, right? That's the hunker down. It's the I'm going to wait it out mindset. Now, there's another mindset that I call sort of the status quo mindset. That's, okay, this is where we are today. We're just going to keep going the way we always did. We're going to muddle through this, is a term that we would use. We're going to muddle through this. We're going to find a way, but we're pretty much going to keep doing what we've always done. And we're going to hope that we come out of this okay. We may have to lay some people off. Our firm may shrink a little bit. Some of our work may go away. But we're just gonna keep plugging away. We're going to keep going forward. And just try to make the best of it. And then the third mindset is the mindset that I call the growth mindset. It's that mindset that says, okay, things have changed. It is what it is. That's what's happened. We have to figure out a way to keep going forward. We have to figure out the changes that we need to make, the pivots that we need to make, maybe in the services that we offer, or pivots in the way that our firm is structured. Whatever it is, we're going to keep going forward as quickly as we can and respond to changes and respond to opportunities in whatever way that we need to keep going, to keep growing. And going back to that idea of the land grab, we're going to look for opportunities to grab land. We're going to look for opportunities to serve our clients in different ways, maybe even serve new clients that have never been our clients before, but we start to see a need that we can solve, and we're going to go after those type needs. So again, those three mindsets are what I call the hunker down mindset, the status quo mindset, and the growth mindset. And I know many people don't really don't necessarily look at it in those terms. They don't say, well, yeah, I'm hunkering down. That's just the way that they're responding to what's going on around them. If we look at those three mindsets, we have to understand that if you have that hunker down mindset, you're not actually moving forward. You're just sitting still. And if you're sitting still, you're actually moving backwards, because things are passing you by. Opportunities are passing you by. If you have that status quo mentality, that status quo mindset, then you're not accelerating, you're not moving forward, you're just holding on, right? You're just trying to go with the flow, if that's a term that you're familiar with, if that's a term that you use. And that also means that if you're in that mindset that's just trying to go along with everyone else, that also means that in a competitive landscape, you're going to struggle, because those people that have that growth mindset, that mindset that says, yes, we're going to move forward as fast as we can. We're going to grow. We're going to look for those opportunities. We're going to look for those pivots that we need to make. Those are the people that are going to be winning more and more of the competitive work. And so we've got to understand that if we want to set ourselves up and have the best chance of not only surviving whatever happens with this economy, whatever happens with the work in our area, if we want to not only survive and thrive, but also grow and come out stronger on the other side of this, we have to have that growth mindset. We have to figure out a way that we can find those new opportunities. We have to figure out a new way to serve our clients. If they have new needs, we've got to match those needs, right? We've got to get into that growth mindset. And so the best way to do that, and again, this applies to not only corporate practice, but if you're a small firm architect, if you're a sole proprietor, you're the only person in your firm, this idea, this problem solution reward, PSR, it's the PSR mindset is what I call it. If we look at everything in terms of problems, meaning the problems that your clients have, the problems that your clients need to have solved, the solution that you can provide for that client, and also the reward that they value after the solution that you've provided. If we can get into that mindset, again, it doesn't matter if we're talking about a corporate firm or if we're talking about an individual firm. If we look at things in terms of what's the problem, what's the solution I can provide, and what's the reward or the result, maybe is a different way to say that. What's the result that my client values that will come after that solution? Then we're going to be in really good shape. And so let me explain it in this way. When an architect comes to me and says, you know what, I feel like we're being commoditized. I feel like our clients don't value us as much as we think they should. One of the reasons that kind of conversation starts is because the architect has lost sight of the fact that the only thing that your client values is the result that they see after the solution that you've provided. Many architects will look and will have the outlook that what we're selling, if we want to say it in that way, what we're providing for our clients is an object. It's a piece that we've designed. It's a museum, or it's a home, or it's a place of worship. Whatever the thing is that we design, many architects look at the product that they're providing as that built piece of architecture that they designed. But the problem is, what their clients actually value is what the result of that is. You've designed this home, and now my entire family can come together and have meals together and fellowship together. You've designed this museum, and now everyone in our community can come and enrich their lives through this museum. It's not about the museum itself. It's about the enrichment of our community. You've designed this place of worship for us, and now people can travel from miles around to worship together. They can come together and have a spiritual time together. Again, it's the thing that they're valuing is not that place of worship. It's the fact that now you've provided a place for them to come together as a worship community and worship together and have that spiritual experience together. That's the thing that they actually value, that reward or that result that comes after the thing that you've designed is built. And so if we can get into this mindset of what is the problem, what's the thing that they need to have solved? Well, you know what? We have this congregation of people, but they don't have a place to come together. That's the problem. The solution that you may be able to provide them is actually designing that place of worship. But the result, the thing that they actually value, is the reward or the result that comes after that thing is built, after you've designed it and after it is built. And so if we can get into this mindset of thinking of everything in terms of what's the problem that my client needs to have solved? What does that mean in today? What does that mean in August of 2020? It may be something as simple as, how do we worship together when this virus is running rampant through the world, when we need to be separated? Is there some way that we can come together safely? There's a lot of conversations about that around the world. How do our kids go back to school when they need to be socially distanced, right? Some of these things, some of these problems are, they're big problems in terms of global health, but they're small problems. How do we solve keeping kids 6 feet or 2 meters apart? How do we do these things, seemingly small things, but the result of that is huge if it keeps our families safe, if it keeps our communities or our countries safe, right? And people stop getting sick, people stop dying from this disease. And so we've got to get into this mindset. I think this is one of the most powerful mindsets that you can get in. Always thinking, what's the problem? What solution can I provide to that problem? And what is the result that my client is actually going to value? That's the first conversation that I have with any architect that says, our clients don't value us like they used to. And the reason for that is usually we don't talk about the result enough. We talk about that museum too much. We talk about that home too much. We don't talk about the result enough. And I know that many people don't look at it this way. Many people look and they say, you know what, we're the experts. We're the designers. We're the great designers. The quality of our design is what sets us apart from our competitors, from that other firm that's that's across town or across the city, whatever the situation is. Many times we look at it, we say, we're the best at this, or we're the experts at this, or our designs are better than anyone else's. But when competition gets tighter and tighter, when your clients have to make more difficult decisions about how they spend money, where they spend money, when they spend money, it becomes more and more important that we focus more on the results, the reward that they're going to get after we've completed that project for them, because that's what they actually value. And it's the firm that's going to talk about those results that's going to differentiate themselves and be more relevant to those clients. And again, this gets me back to my study of ego versus empathy. This is the third main point. The first point was the land grab. Things are changing. There's a land grab out there. You've got to look for those opportunities to grab. The second point was the problem, solution, result, or reward mindset. And the third big point is ego versus empathy. And just to sum this up very quickly, this idea is based on psychology and on neuroscience. And what we know from the psychology of it all and from the neuroscience studies is that when we start a conversation with someone from a point of ego, and what I mean by that is not that you're egotistical or not that you're egomaniacal or anything like that, but when you start talking to someone from the point of view of this is what I know and this is what I think is important, then the human brain says, you know what? That's not really what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in what you think is important. I'm interested in what's important to me. I'm interested in what will help me survive, what will help me thrive. I'm interested in the things that will make my life better. And so if we think about that in terms of the practice of architecture, your job as an architect is to make your client's life better. Think about that for a minute. If you design homes, if you design museums or restaurants or places of worship, whatever it is that you design, your job is not to design that thing. Your job is to make that client's life better. Now, how does that translate? Is it a business and their business is more successful? Yes, that makes their life better. Is it a place of worship? if they have a peaceful place, a safe place, a new place that everyone can come to, if we have that now in our community, in our worship community, does that make our client's life better? Yes, of course it does. That's the reward, right? It's the result that they're looking for. So when we start the conversation from a point of ego, that's a great way to turn their brain off, for them to say, no, that's not what I want to talk about. That's not what I want to hear about. I don't want to hear about how great you are. I want to hear about that reward, that place for us to worship together, that place for our community to come together and see those sculptures or those paintings or whatever it is that's in the museum, or that place for my family to be able to gather together and fellowship together. Now, the flip side of that is when we start a conversation from a point of empathy, understanding their point of view, understanding our clients' needs and their feelings, and how to connect with those needs and those feelings. When we start out from a point of empathy, we start out in alignment with their brain. It's just psychology. It's just neuroscience. When we start out talking about the things that matter most to them and empathizing with those feelings that they have, those frustrations that they have, those needs that they have, they're much more likely to say, yes, this is exactly what I want to talk about. This is exactly what I need. And I'll give you a concrete example. When I started writing my proposals to my clients, I probably wrote proposals. I spent 23 years working in architecture firms before I went out on my own. I probably wrote proposals in a very similar way to the way that you do. When I changed that around and I started out my proposals talking about the things that were most important to my clients, and the things, the feelings that they had expressed, the frustrations that they had because they needed a new restaurant or they needed a new home or whatever it was that needed to be designed. When I started out talking or writing those proposals from a point of empathy, it amazed me because the very first proposal that I sent out, structured in that way, structured from empathy first, not about how great I was, not about my skills, not about my expertise, not about the things that I had studied and how I could help them, but about the things that mattered to them. The very first response that I got from the very first client that I sent a proposal structured like that was, and this is a direct quote, and it came back within minutes. And that almost never happened to me before. Usually I'd send a proposal and they say, thanks, I'm going to review this and I have to think about it and all of those things. The very first response came back within minutes of sending them the proposal, and it said, and I quote, "This is exactly what we need." That was eye-opening for me because I had basically proposed back to them what they had told me, the things that they needed. I had dug deep, gotten to a point of empathy and understanding for them, and said, listen, I know this is what you need. I know this can help you like this because this is what we talked about. So let's do this. That's a very quick summary, of course, of what that the idea of that proposal was. But they came back and they said, that is exactly what we need. I'd never had a response like that before. And it showed me that the study that I was doing of ego versus empathy was right on, because I had approached it from a point of empathy rather than a point of empathy, or rather than a point of ego. I'm the expert in this and I have these qualifications and all of that. I didn't start that way. I started with what mattered most to them. It opens doors. It really opens doors, and it sets you apart because you're that empathetic architect. You're that architect that listens, that cares, that feels like the right fit for what we need. If we don't do that, if we keep talking in the same way that we did 6 months ago, if we keep proposing in the way that we did 6 months ago, if we keep saying and doing the same things in the same way that we did 6 months ago, what's likely to happen? You're likely to run into a client that says, no, wait a minute, stop. How is that even relevant to our situation today? Things have changed in the last 6 months. if you look the same and you sound the same and you act the same, if you say the same things, if you do the same things in the same way that you did just 6 months ago, before the economy started to crash, before there was a global pandemic, ripping through the world, there's somebody that's going to say, you're not even relevant to me anymore. What you just said is so February or so January. It doesn't even apply to us in our situation today. So that's my encouragement to you today, is that if we can think about the land grab, the new opportunities, the opportunities that didn't even exist 6 months ago, maybe with new clients, maybe new project types, maybe new services that they need. If you can put everything that you do, everything that you write, everything that you say, the way that you propose things in a problem, solution, result, or reward mindset, problem, solution, reward format, if you can remember to start your conversations, start every conversation, start everything that you write from a point of empathy rather than ego, it's going to be accepted. It's going to be embraced. You're going to have people saying, yes, this feels like the right architect for me. This feels exactly right. This is exactly what we've been looking for. Because the great news is that we have uncommon opportunity in front of us right now that we've never had before. There are things that are in front of us. There are changes, like I said at the very beginning. Technological adaptation has been off the charts in the last 6 months. Things are changing. They're changing very quickly. Things are very fluid, which means that there's uncommon opportunity, maybe in ways that we've never seen in our lifetimes. There are opportunities for architects to do new things in new ways for new people that didn't even exist 6 months ago. And so that's my encouragement to you. With 3 simple changes: understanding that there's a land grab and you have to get out there and grab that land; understanding that if you format everything in terms of problem, solution, and result or reward; understanding that if you start everything from a point of empathy rather than a point of ego, you can capitalize on opportunities that didn't even exist just 6 months ago. And so I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll embrace those ideas and think differently about the ways that you communicate with your clients and the ways that you serve your clients and the ways that you look for those needs. Because if you do that, there are opportunities out there that you can seize upon and not just survive. I don't want you to survive. I don't even want you to thrive. I want you to be able to grow and accelerate out of this time that we're in right now, this recessive time that we're in right now. I want you to be able to grow and explode out of this. That's the goal. We need to come out better on the other side than the way that we came into it. So that's my encouragement to you. There's uncommon opportunity if you're willing to do these things and if you're willing to seize it right now. The question is, are you ready? Are you ready to take this opportunity, and are you ready to move forward right now? What questions do you have about any of this? I know I've gone through a lot of information very quickly. So what questions? Rashid says, since you strongly favor the growth mindset, I take it that you expect the effects of the pandemic to be long lasting, and therefore pivoting from a firm's current positioning in the market is worth the effort and the loss of the old positioning. Is that correct? I would say mainly yes. I don't, if I'm really honest with myself and with the firms that I serve, I have to say yes. I think this is going to be long lasting. And again, sometimes in small ways and sometimes in large ways, right? I don't think until there is a safe vaccine that's available to everyone, I don't see there really being a return to normal I think we just have to accept that there's a new normal, and there's going to be a fluid and evolving new normal. Now, to your point of pivoting and losing your old positioning, I don't think it necessarily has to be that drastic. I'm not really looking at growth in terms of total abandonment of your old positioning, but let me give you a small example. There's a firm that I work with that one of their offices, almost everything they do is design fire stations. And the conversations that we had, say in April or May of this year, were, you design fire stations, but if you look out there right now, you know that many of these fire stations in the United States, we call firefighters and nurses and doctors and paramedics, those type of people, we call them first responders. Maybe you call them the same thing, but the conversation was that, listen, you design all these fire stations, and right now, no one's going to build a new fire station. They're too busy serving the public health. But what you can do right now, one pivot you can make right now, is to talk to those, if the fire chief, let's just say, is the client for those projects, you can reach out to all the fire chiefs and say, listen, I know you're using your fire station differently today than you did just a few months ago. In the United States, and I know elsewhere in the world, they were building temporary, even tents and temporary structures to park vehicles and to serve those that were sick and things like that. So why not take your expertise to all of those fire chiefs and say, can we help you figure some of these things out? Can we help you figure out the new ways to use these facilities, even if it's in a temporary way? So when I say pivot, I don't necessarily mean a total abandonment, but look to your best clients, whoever those best clients are, and have very honest and candid conversations about what are the new needs that you have. What is different today than it was, let's say, back in January of 2020, if we use that as just a line in the, a date on the calendar, right? How have things changed for you? Because to your point, if your positioning hasn't changed in the last 6 months, I think you've got to ask a very serious question and say, is our position, and let's just, again, just simple example, whatever your website says, the language on your website. If your website says the same thing it does, the same thing today that it did back in January, is it relevant to your ideal client's situation anymore? I use that term ideal client a lot when I'm working with my clients, because those are the people that you should be trying to find, right? Your ideal client. So if your website or your social media or the things you say in conversation, if they're the exact same thing today as they were 6 months ago, I believe you've got a problem, because those ideal clients are thinking differently today. No matter what has changed for them, they're thinking differently and they're saying things differently and their outlook is different. So, again, I don't think it's total abandonment of your old position, but yes, I think you need to look and do a strong analysis of who your clients are, what's changing, what they're saying that's different, and adapt to that, adjust to that, align with that. Shahinda says, understanding the categorization of the three mindsets, I was wondering, how would you reflect on a personal level as individual architects looking for work in architecture firms? So the client now is the architectural firm. How can an architect adopt growth mindset? That's an excellent question. So that takes the context away from a firm competing for work and changes it to an architect that's looking for a job, right? For a new job, I think is what you're saying there. So number one, yes, I would definitely adapt that growth mindset, and I would make an analysis of what my best skills and my best assets are, and look at the way the needs of the firm have changed. Let's just say I'm going to try to gain a position in firm ABC, as a for instance. How have things changed for them? Right? They've probably started working remotely. You know, if they used to have an office with, say, 50 people in it, maybe those 50 people are now working from home, or they're working remotely in some way. Do I have something specific that relates to that new? You know, am I really good at managing projects in a remote environment? You know, do I have something that will help that firm succeed in this new environment that they have? Maybe and I don't want to, you know, this could sound like complete ego on my part, but maybe after a conversation like this today, maybe you approach a firm leader and say, you know what, I understand a better way to communicate with your clients, because things are changing for those clients. And I understand that by having great conversations with them and developing empathy for them, we can provide a better client experience. We can do a better job. We can make sure that we are focusing on the problems that they have and the results, the rewards that they value. It might be something as simple as that, but positioning yourself, and again, looking at that problem, solution, reward, or result mindset. What's the problem that firm has? What solution are they looking for in hiring someone? And what are they really going to value? When I'm talking to someone that's looking to be an employee, maybe an employee at a new firm or something like that, the thing that I always encourage is, don't think of your value to the firm in terms of your ability to draw details, or your ability to manage the production of construction documents, or your ability to design a restaurant, whatever your main function would be. Don't think about your value in terms of that. Think about the value in terms of what you add to that firm. Hey, when my designs of restaurants have made my past clients more successful, more profitable, have given my past clients the ability to build a second restaurant, to expand their business, to grow. That's what I bring to the table. It's not just designing this, but it's the ability to make our clients more successful, right? When we can look beyond just our task, again, the result or the reward that they're looking for, when we can look beyond that to a greater value that we bring, when we can define a greater value beyond just the task, that sets us apart. But it also shows that prospective employer the value that we bring beyond, well, okay, here's someone that can design restaurants, or here's someone that can do details, or here's someone that can manage projects. This is a person that actually understands how to make us more efficient. This is someone that can help us manage projects in a new virtual environment. Always go to that next level of value. That's what I would say about that. And Reem says, deep thinking, absolutely, I see the flip of a coin on each side. Atef wants to know how to turn this into a strategy. My view on that is that the strategy has to be to make sure, no matter what kind of work we do, no matter who our clients are, to really change our focus from our expertise, which is most professional services firms. And you know, I'm not looking to say this is only architects. It's architects, it's engineers, it's accountants, it's attorneys. It's most, when they market themselves and when they build their brand, when they talk about themselves, it's inwardly focused. we're the experts at designing schools, or we're the best at designing this, or our designs are the best, or it's usually this inward focus, which is that ego piece. So if the first strategic change is to change to an outward focus, we're going to be the most empathetic. We're going to develop a radical empathy for our clients, their needs, the things that they need to accomplish. If we can go there first and then use that framework, that problem, solution, result, or reward framework, and focus, and I truly do mean everything. It's the way that we talk. It's the way that we make presentations to try to get that new project. It's the way that we write our proposals. It's the words. It's the way that we put things on our website or social media or whatever we do. If we get into that mindset, using that framework, that problem, solution, result, or reward, PSR, that's the strategy. If we frame everything based on that, then what I find with most firms that I work with, and I'm going to change the slide so you have contact information because I know some of you may need to go, but for most firms that I work with, that simple change in perspective is transformative, because all of a sudden they go from focusing on themselves to focusing on their ideal client and only their ideal client, from focusing on ego to approaching everything from a point of empathy. And so when we do that, it transforms their firm from one where clients and even employees see commoditization, see a firm that's just like every other firm, to one of value. Wow, this firm really creates value for their clients. This firm really creates value for their employees. And so I think, I hope that makes sense, but that's the strategy that I think that you can use. Again, it's just a change in perspective. But what I found is that, that it is quite transformative for firms that adopt that thinking. And Tef says, could you please tell us a bit about you? Many in the room missed the first slide. So I didn't talk about myself at the very beginning, and I do that on purpose. You'll notice that I talked about ego versus empathy. And so when I start out, I start talking about the problems that you may have, the challenges that you may be facing. So a little bit about myself. I have 2 degrees in architecture. I worked in architecture firms for about 23 years, I think it is, before I went out on my own. And I realized very early on, thanks to other people, there were other people that saw skills in me, saw proficiencies in me that I didn't see, that I didn't necessarily recognize. And so those people steered me towards the business side of architecture. Marketing, business development. Maybe someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, you're really good at writing those things. Go help the business development team with this thing that they're working on. They've got a deadline on Friday, some conversations like that. So as I grew up in the profession of architecture, even though I worked as project manager, I worked as designer, all of those things, my career continually veered towards management of firms, marketing, business development, leadership development, things like that. And so when I went out on my own in 2014, one of the decisions that I made was because I have a passion for helping firms and for helping firms get better at what they do, build better businesses, being better at the business of architecture. When I went out on my own in 2014, I decided, or when I left the last firm that I worked for, I decided to go out basically as a consultant and build my own business, because I felt that I could have a greater impact on the profession by helping many firms than just going back to another firm and helping one firm. And so my mission is really to help architects be better architects, to help architects build better businesses. And the tagline I guess I use is, I'm out to change the way that you do business by helping your clients and also your employees see value rather than commodity when you communicate from a point of empathy rather than a point of ego. And that's all comes out of the study of ego versus empathy. But I work with firms all over to help them change the way they market themselves, help them change the way they develop business, help them change the way they build their firm culture, and help them change the way that they create their client experience by starting from a point of empathy rather than a point of ego. That everything revolves around that idea of ego versus empathy. I host a podcast called the Build Your Brand podcast. And if you're familiar, if you've ever heard of the group called Entre Architect or Entre Architect Academy, there's a Facebook group called the Entre Architect Community Facebook group. If you're an architect or trained as an architect or an architecture student, you can join that Facebook group. And I host a show at 4 p.m. Eastern every day inside that group called Context and Clarity Live. And we do Facebook Live events every day. We pick a topic every day that I like to say they're the topics that are critical for architects to understand in order to grow better businesses, in order to get better at the business of architecture. So we cover all kinds of topics from leadership to marketing to business development to Friday we talked about practicing internationally. So it's a great tie-in with this conversation today. But all kinds of topics. There's 6,000 members in that group, and if you'd like to be a part of that, there's no cost or anything to it. Just join it and engage in the community. But that's a little bit about me, and I'm very active on LinkedIn, as you can see up here on the screen. If you'd like to send me a connection request on LinkedIn, I'd love it. I'd love to connect. Just reach out to me. Say, hey, I listened to you today, and I'd like to connect. I'm happy to do that.
So
like
Jeff,
I said, sorry, go ahead.
Can you add then a group name on the chat?
Yes, yeah, I can do that. Absolutely.
Because that will help everyone to get it.
Yep. So it's the Entre Architect Community, and then it's a Facebook group, and all you have to do is you go. It's a closed group. It's just for architects. Like I said, if you're an architect, you're trained as an architect, you're an architecture student. That way, no one's in there selling anything or anything like that. It's a very, very engaged community of architects. So if you go there, I think the button says request to join or something like that. Just do that. Someone will review, make sure you are an architect or student, et cetera, and they'll let you in. And it's one of the most engaged groups on Facebook, actually. So, oops, I forgot to hit return. There you go.
Oh, actually, okay.
Oh, I did it. I'm sorry, I did it privately.
I will write it. It's fine.
Okay, thank you. But again, I'm happy to connect. If you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, just send me a connection request and say, hey, I was part of your part of the conversation today. But that's my goal. It's to build a stronger community of architects. It's to help architects be better at the business of architecture.
I think we have maybe one or two questions that we missed. The last question was from Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah's question is a good one. I feel like a certain level of ego should be communicated rather than using pure empathy. And you're right. It can't be pure empathy, because at the end of the day, you are the expert. As an architect, you are the expert. You're the professional. But starting from the point of this is what's important to the client, and then transitioning to this is how I can help you, right? So if you think about that framework, the problem, solution, and then result or reward framework, if we focus on the problem first, that's the empathy part, right? This is what they need. This is what they're expressing. This is what they're feeling. The solution part is your expertise, right? It's your professionalism coming in at that part. So it can't be pure empathy. You're exactly right about that. But dialing that ego back, if we want to say it in that way, and leaving it to, later in the conversation. One of the things I work with a lot of groups on presentations, and, when they've made the short list, they go in for the short list interview, and a lot of architects or a lot of teams will walk in, to do their presentation, and they'll say, we're ABC Architects. Thanks for inviting us to be here today. And the thing that I point out to them is that the thing that happened right before you walked into the room was that someone from the selection committee stuck their head out the door, and they said, hey, ABC Architects, we're ready for you. And you say, okay, great. You walk in and you say, hey, we're ABC Architects. We're the experts at designing schools, and we've been doing schools for 73 years, and whatever the pitch is, right? And I say, you really have about 3 minutes to win over that audience, to win that selection committee over. Why do you waste 3 minutes telling them about yourself? They already know. They stuck their head out the door and said, hey, ABC, and you walked in and said, we're ABC. They already know who you are. Focus on what's important to them. Focus on what their needs are. Don't waste your time at the very beginning of the conversation talking about yourself. That's not what they want to hear. They want to hear about their problems, the solutions to their problem, and the result that's going to come at the end of that. Let's see. Raham says, empathy is all about client-centered design and starting new need-finding studies in new contexts. That's absolutely right. I think we could all do a better job, no matter how good you are. You can do a better job of asking great questions and listening and asking great follow-up questions. There's this technique called the 5 whys that you may have heard of. The design thinking firm IDEO uses a lot. They're not the only ones. They didn't come up with it. But when someone says, this is what we need, your next question, after you listen to that is, well, why do you think you need that? And they say, because of this. And then you say, well, maybe the follow-up question is, well, what would life look like if you accomplished that? It's this process of asking deeper and deeper questions to get closer and closer to the real core answer there.
There is only one question that we missed. It is, let me read it for you if you like. It is please. From Hind. Receiving sincere verbal data might encounter a couple of negative ideas. As an expert in practicing empathy, how do you prevent yourself from absorbing those negative vibes?
And that's a really great question, right? Because I think as human beings, negativity is always going to be there, right? And how do we, and different personalities are different. And so if you're talking to a group of people, there's likely to be someone in that group that is somewhat negative or is pushing back or something like that. That's the way it is. What I would do is go back to the idea of the 5 whys, right? If you're talking about something and someone says, well, I don't believe that, or I think that's a bad thing. However the negativity is expressed, your next question, your follow-up to that could be, okay, I understand what you're saying there, but why do you feel that way? Why do you, what makes you think? That's probably, don't say what makes you think. No one ever likes that, but why does it feel like that's going to happen? Or why does it feel like that negative is going to present itself? Again, I think it's, as human beings, we're not generally trained to answer questions or talk about things in very deep ways, especially to strangers. right? When a stranger asks a question or when a stranger says something, most often our response is a very, very surface, very superfluous response. And so as architects, people that are trying to develop empathy for that prospective client or whoever they are, our job then becomes to ask follow-up questions, to dig deeper, to try to get down. I don't know if you use this term, but a term that I use a lot is to peel the onion, right? To take off one layer and then the next layer and the next layer to try to get deeper and deeper to the actual core of the matter. You know, when someone says, well, we're struggling with this, there's probably something several layers deeper than whatever this was that they said. So to develop that empathy, if we can keep asking those questions, and it's a skill, you've got to develop it without being offensive, without, putting them off, but try to peel those layers, try to expose the next layer down and the next layer down by saying things like, well, what does it feel like when that happens? If it's something that's negative, what would it be like if that didn't happen? Right? If you say that, you're not arguing with them, but you're saying, okay, well, what would it be like if that didn't happen? And all of a sudden now you've turned them around to the other side, to the positive side of that. And so I think really the gold is in the follow-up and being able to dig down deeper.
I think that's it. We have gone through all the questions. So thank you again for this motivating and inspiring talk. It was actually really excellent talk.
I thank you, and I know, it's what, about 9:20 p.m. for you, so I know that you made sacrifices to spend this time with me, and I really appreciate that. If you have any more questions or want to talk about this more, again, I invite you to send me a connection request on LinkedIn. I'm happy to accept it and discuss this more. That's my personal mission. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and be safe and be well.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks.